Welcome back to the Real Texas Radio Podcast. I am your host, Bronin. Thank you for tuning in once again to the Real Texas Radio Podcast. Or if you are joining the show for the first time, 1,000 welcomes. I've got a big show planned, and the marquee segment is, of course, going to be the fate of Dallas City Hall in light of the report that just dropped last week with the price tag, the alleged price tag of how much it would actually cost to get City Hall back to snuff. But before we jump into that story, I want to talk about some of the craziness going on at the Dallas County Commissioner's Court. I've got some DART updates too. If you haven't already followed me on X, you can check me out at RTR_Bronin, RTR_Bronin. I've also published a fairly new column. If you haven't checked that out, you can find that on X as well. I publish on Substack. Let's go ahead and get into it. All right now, you're listening to the Real Texas Radio Podcast. I'm your host, Bronin, just a fed-up taxpayer bringing you all of your Texas, local, and national news. Okay, we're going to start off with some sound in just a moment of COVID Clay Jenkins, the feckless, hapless, pandering Gavin Newsom wannabe county judge here in Dallas.
You ain't talking about me, guys. It's this county judge. You ain't talking about this county judge. No.
Yeah, we are. We are talking about you, you loser. And I just saw a photo of him. He posted it on X with a big bleep-eating grin on his face standing next to, it looks like he just met his man crush for the first time, Beto O'Rourke. I've never seen a guy look so happy to see another guy. And
are you a homosexual?
I don't know. I don't know, President Trump. He is married to a much younger woman, I believe, a second wife, and he does have twin toddlers who were young enough to be his grandchildren. But in any case, COVID Clay, I'm not going to go into his whole history, but if you want to read the whole history of COVID Clay, or the recent history, and how he gets his nickname COVID Clay, you can check out my column on him, which you can find that on X at RTR_Bronin, RTR_Bronin. It'll lead you to Substack. But during the meeting, the most recent Dallas County Commissioners meeting last week, COVID Clay, I noticed he starts kind of fingering his nose a little bit. You got a little bit of a tickle. And the next thing you know, big sneeze into his hand. And I tweeted that video out too if you want to see that. There's really no audio to accompany that just as well. Should I have told you to get the vomit bag? Because we've got more vomit-inducing sound from COVID Clay coming right up, unfortunately. But he just sneezes into his hand. And you know what I was reminded of? Isn't that like one of the most basic things that you should not do if you are concerned at all about public health?
Are we doing anything new with the pimps?
I'd forgotten all about the pimps, COVID Clay. Thanks for the reminder. I don't know. But you don't sneeze into your hand. I know people do it all the time. I'm not a germaphobe by any means, but I learned in high school, we had a librarian who I really liked in high school, and we had a really good relationship. But she was funny, and she would go nuts if she saw somebody sneeze. Oh, she would come over and spray you and make sure that you sneezed into the crook of your elbow. She was not having it. And there's COVID Clay, who ejected a Republican colleague from the chamber a few years ago because he wasn't wearing a mask. And now here is COVID Clay sneezing into his hand.
You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
So, just the hypocrisy, just another reminder of how bad he is and how he needs to be ejected from office. He needs to be fired. He's running for his 5th term, as you know, on the Democrat side. Unfortunately, it looks like we're going to be getting him for that 5th term because there is just such little interest in what goes on at the local level in government. And so then he reads this poem. This was earlier in the meeting. He reads a poem to honor the late Reverend Jesse Jackson, the pandering dope that he is. And just listen to this poem. I'm going to play a little bit of it here.
Somebody. I am somebody. I may be poor. I may be poor. But I am somebody. I am somebody. I may be young. I may be young. But I am somebody. But I am somebody. I may be on welfare. I may be on welfare. But I am somebody. But I am somebody. I may be small.
I may be poor. I may be on welfare. No, you know what, COVID Clay? No, let's go ahead and let's take some stock of what you are. You're an ambulance-chasing, PPP loan grifting Highland Park lawyer. You advertise on television and billboards, and you just gave yourself a raise because you're in a position of authority to do that. You earn over $200,000 a year just from the county. So you know what? Maybe in a sense you are on welfare. Maybe he wasn't lying about that. But I don't know if it was COVID Clay who decided I'm going to read this poem and this is, people are going to think I'm really cool in the Black and the Latin community here in Dallas.
I love the Black population of this country. I've done so much for the Black population of this country.
You know what? I don't think that COVID Clay can make that claim, but I just wanted to share the latest, what's going on at the Dallas County Commissioners. Not much. The first half of it, as I may have explained before, stultifying. It's all employee of the month, giving out fake awards, adulation. They spend 90 minutes, 2 hours just taking photos and bleeping each other off. And they're so proud of all the good Democrat work they're doing down there. Retirement celebrations. And I don't get it. You know, I was always one of those people that so long as the boss is making sure that my direct deposit is showing up in my account when it's supposed to, that's thanks enough for me. I don't need any pat on the back or congratulations or you're doing a great job. Really, the money part of the relationship, that's what does it for me. But for some adults, people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, that birthday cake from the coworkers really makes all the difference, I guess. All right, that's enough about COVID Clay. Okay, I want to spend a few minutes talking about DART. And DART, it appears, has gotten a lifeline from Plano. No, it is not the end of the line for DART, so it appears. Plano, they have decided that they're going to cancel their election. They were going to ask the voters in May, should we withdraw from DART and forge our own path? They were looking at other micro-transit options. And, you know, there are 5 or 6 other cities in DART, Dallas area rapid transit, that are also putting to their voters whether to withdraw. Well, it looks like many of these cities, they may follow Plano, and they may cancel their elections as well, with the exception of University Park. And what precipitated Plano's move to cancel the May election? Well, it's really a number of factors, but the governance restructuring is now on the table. That was one of the big pieces. Dallas had, I think, a little bit over a 50% majority vote on the DART board, which makes sense because Dallas has I think, well over 50% of the ridership, contributes, I think, over 50% of DART's budget. And so that would make sense that Dallas would have unequal weight in that equation. The governance is weighted, but Dallas agreed to claw back some of its majority down to the, I think, 45% range. And then the other piece is these cities, they don't want to give over the full penny of the sales tax to DART. So DART has agreed to return some of the sales tax to cities. And I think that Dallas will benefit from that as well. But there's a regional transportation council or authority that is going to plug some of that funding gap, I believe. But, DART, of course, is saying, oh, there's going to be service cuts. There's going to be service cuts if we have to do this. You're not going to notice. If you're out there waiting for a bus, you're not going to notice, because the bus doesn't really have a good track record of coming on time anyway, does it? Or the train. So you're going to just continue to get subpar service and have to engage with the homeless, junkie bum, criminal vagrant, mental patient, ne'er-do-well, recidivist, reprobate element. So go ahead, cut the service, DART. Why don't you go ahead? Why don't you start collecting fares? They are relying on just 6% of their entire budget is from fares. And I think when DART launched in the 1980s, over 50% of its revenue was from fares. So now it's just a big welfare program and mobile homeless shelter, as we know. I'm not going to go into a whole diatribe about that. But that's the latest with DART. And just for the record, I am pro public transit, and I think it's important, but it needs to be safe, and you just can't give it over to the scum of town. You can't just give it over to the junkies and to the scumbags. That cannot be what your public transit is, or normal people. They're not going to ride it. People who are not doing meth in the middle of the morning are not going to pay to get onto a train and have to watch out and have situational awareness because there's other people on the train who are doing meth and other drugs and plotting to kill you. So that's really the piece that we need to get addressed. What I think is really the takeaway from these DART negotiations and scheduling these withdrawal elections is, in order to get DART to come to the table, these cities, Plano, Irving, Highland Park, Farmers Branch, they had to get tough with DART, because it seems like DART perhaps forgot its role in the relationship. These member cities are customers. They pay a lot of money. And DART is supposed to provide a certain level of service. And every 6 years, cities, they can actually vote to withdraw from DART. And that mechanism, I believe, was installed in case DART, which it did, forgot its role in the relationship. And I'm just going to go ahead. I played this cut. This is back in November from the Plano City Council meeting. This was the meeting where the city council voted to launch the withdrawal election. This is one of the city councilors, Quintanilla. He is asking a member of staff to just discuss his experience trying to talk with DART.
Content to that quickly. But just to make it clear, and I know it's already been stated, but this is not our first discussion about DART. We've had multiple meetings, multiple data requests, multiple negotiations without the needle being moved. Is that correct?
That is correct. We thought perhaps the needle had moved with the 5% general mobility program, again, until those strings were added, and unfortunately.
Okay, well, which brings us where we're at today.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah. So they weren't negotiating to the satisfaction of one of their customers. And so rather than accommodating Plano, which it sounds like it would have cost DART a lot less to do that, Plano essentially motivated its peer cities to get in on this action. And now it's just worked out much better, I think, for the cities to be able to recapture some of the money. And, maybe DART was they were more focused about giving out bonuses to the executives. I don't know what possibly could trigger a bonus for somebody at DART. It's certainly not ridership numbers, not on-time service, certainly not anything to do with the Silver Line, which was over budget, delivered late, and again is not anywhere near the level of providing the ridership as estimated. So this is what I wish that more voters would do and citizens would do, and put their government in the position of having to be accountable for their dollars, for the dollars that they are confiscating from the electorate in order to spend, often prolifically, often without much thought. So this was the instructive lesson, I think, that came out of the DART negotiations. Okay, so before we start talking about what's going on with the City Hall building in Dallas, I want to talk about another story. The Grinch Danelle Willis. She had a bad week last week.
You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch. You really are a heel.
Yeah, she really is a heel, and in a very surprising move, she got a big smackdown. I wrote a column on it, actually one of my best read columns. I recommend you check that out. You can find it on X, _Bronin, _Bronin. I've got some photos to accompany the article if you want the deeper story. But she has been on a crusade to shut down this viral TikTok house in her neighborhood that presents a huge light display at Halloween and more famously at Christmas. And she tried to get an ordinance passed that essentially would have fined this house in particular $2,500 a day if they didn't stop doing this, just decorating lavishly. And let's just go ahead. I'm going to play her comments in the meeting of the Quality of Life Arts and Culture Committee last week.
810. So this is pretty focused on, it's got to be a pretty big deal, and creating safety concerns to even be called into effect, which should not touch most, if anybody.
So she wants her colleagues, she's trying to pressure them to pass an ordinance that she just admits right there is not going to touch anybody. It shouldn't touch anybody. We need to have this ordinance because it's never going to be used. That's why it's so important. That's what it sounds like her argument is. And then she makes this other very revealing, interesting remark.
I know the kind of work that's gone into this, and we have, to Councilmember Cadena's point, looked at other cities and how things are handled. And this sort of situation hasn't occurred that we've been able to find, because I know you all have really been turning over every stone to find what we could point to on this.
So then she points out that it doesn't appear that any other city in America has passed an ordinance like this because, well, it's a very clear First Amendment violation. Essentially, she wants to stop pedestrians from walking down this public taxpayer-maintained street in her wealthy enclave of Preston Hollow. So I'm not going to go ahead over the whole story again. I've done several episodes on this. Like I said, the column on X, _Bronin. But the really interesting thing is I thought that the committee was going to vote to support the Grinch, but they did not. And you know who was really the patriot during the meeting? I won't play his comments, but Adam Basildua, he was sitting right next to her looking at Gay Danelle Willis, and they're usually in cahoots, but like what a dope she is. And he just pointed out that it's a clear First Amendment violation, and there was a city attorney or one of the lawyers who works for the city who's supposed to be weighing in on these matters. He just pointed out, like, look, the lawyers, they don't want to say anything about this because they know what a quandary, what a quagmire this could drag the city into, trying to enforce foolishness like this. So it was really good to see him on the right side of this issue. I just expected he was going to go along to get along. So nice job, Baz. Keep it up. And he's also, it appears, he's on the right side of the next issue. Let's go ahead and talk about the Dallas City Hall. So Friday night, late Friday night, this report that we've all been waiting for on how much it's going to cost to get the Dallas City Hall building up to snuff, back to structural integrity. And back in the fall, this issue first arose during one of the city council committee meetings. I think either the finance, whichever one Chad West chairs, this item just popped up, how he was claiming that the city hall was in such poor condition that the city hall really needs to be relocated. And then very conveniently in the audience of that meeting were all of the developers who work for the biggest campaign contributors to the Dallas City Council, particularly Chad West, and also particularly the Grinch, Gay Janelle Willis, who was also on that committee.
Physically, she's not my type, and now that I've gotten indirectly to hear things about her, she wouldn't be my type in any way, shape, or form.
I concur, President Trump. So anyway, the estimates, it was just like wild estimates about how bad of shape the City Hall building was in and how much it was going to cost to repair it. We were hearing it was going from like $50 million to $200 million to $350 million. And then Mayor Johnson, a few weeks later, he went on to, I think it was Inside Texas Politics, and he was asked about it. This could have been in November, maybe early December, but I think it was November. And Mayor Johnson, again, before any report had surfaced, before the experts had been allowed to weigh in, he threw out $650 million, I believe. That's how much it was going to cost. And you could just tell he had somewhat of a flippant attitude, I thought, about his remarks on I.M. Pei, the famous architect who designed it. He went as far as to say, we shouldn't even have a famous architect design city buildings, just so we don't end up in this situation again. That didn't really get a whole lot of attention, but you could just tell that Chad West wants to leave, Gay Janelle Willis wants to leave, Mayor Johnson wants to leave. He's only got a couple more years left in his term. But Chad West thinks he's going to be mayor, and he's looking at some of these office towers downtown, and I think he'd like to be in the top floor in the corner office with a view. And out of the dowdy 1970s brutalist-looking Dallas City Hall building. Now, my opinion has been, it's kind of been all over the map on this. I mean, I don't really think the building is a very good-looking building, to put it mildly. It actually reminds me of the City Hall in Boston, my hometown. So definitely at first I was kind of like, if we are potentially going to lose the Mavs, then let's get rid of this building. That was kind of my attitude about it. But as others have weighed in, it appears if the Mavs, they want to remain in downtown Dallas and they want to be over near the City Hall, there are 30 to 50 contiguous acres where they could build a perfectly serviceable brand new arena and entertainment district. So in any case, the report was dumped on Friday, like I said, February 20th. And do you know what the price tag is? Do you know what they're claiming in this report? And I've tweeted out some of the slides. You can find the presentation on the City Hall website. Up to $1.4 billion. Up to $1.4 billion to fix the water deteriorating the underground garage, replacing the roof, replacing the HVAC, replacing the plumbing, electrical upgrades, ADA compliance. And, and then just for good measure, they threw in new furniture and new fixtures and new bathrooms and a gut job, it basically looks like. And they would have to displace the city staff for 5 years in order to complete everything on this list in the most efficient manner possible. And, in the one sense, it's like, how did we go? So Mayor Johnson, he said just a couple of months ago, $650 million. So he just about doubled the estimate that was going around just a couple of weeks prior. And now it's doubled again from the $650 million. Now it's $1.4 billion, which I did see in the slides. These are repairs that they could be phased over years. They don't need to be all done at once. They could be phased over 20 years. And, Dallas and Fuego, he tweeted out, which I thought was really funny, but just 4 different buildings that have been recently built or repaired, including Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, which caught fire in 2019. And I think those repairs are completed, although a 1,000-year-old structure, a cathedral, you're never done. You are constantly maintaining. Anything like that requires constant, very expensive maintenance. But from the 2019 disaster, it looked like that cost $750 million to repair Notre Dame, an actual historic structure that would require all kinds of artisan laborers and master laborers and all kind of special care and attention to be able to get that building repaired. $750 million. But the Dallas City Hall, $1.4 billion. And then you know what? I did a little AI searching, and I just said to the AI, I want a list. Give me a list of 10 U.S. cities that have recently repaired their city hall buildings and the price tag associated with it. And obviously I was looking for recent repairs because of, the inflation. We can't compare anything to 5 years ago because of the inflation. Well, thank you, Democrats, for COVID. That's where we get all that inflation. But did you enjoy your couple of stimulus checks, you moron, for all the inflation that we have? A piece of plywood, I think, went up to like $75 or something crazy, up from 20, if I'm recalling figures from a few years ago. So, the inflation, right? So that's going to be a big reason. That'll be one of the big reasons the city staff says why it's so expensive. And a totally legitimate report. Look at all the experts and the consultants and the engineers who we've got to tour the building. They spent 18 or 20 days looking at the building, thousands of hours and photographs. And the other piece that's in these slides is, it's a great environment to be leasing right now. Great real estate market. Now, these same people tell us constantly that we're in a housing crisis. A crisis! We're in a crisis. There's not enough real estate. There's not enough housing. And that's why we need to give out tax abatements to every single developer who asks for one. And we don't want to ask too many questions. We need to just give away tax base to developers because we're in a crisis. But then when it comes to the Dallas City Hall, it's a great environment to be looking at real estate. We have this totally paid off building that doesn't have a tax burden. And this would be a great time to just exit and move into one of the developers, one of our biggest campaign donors' properties, and pay rent on the backs of the taxpayers. That really makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
That's ridiculous. That would be ridiculous, right? After 50 years, please.
Yeah, the building isn't even 50 years old. And as I pointed out in a recent column, these tax abatements that the city council lavishly grants to anybody who wants one, unless you're a normal person who's not a developer. I should have specified. You got to be a developer. They basically give a lifetime tax abatement, no taxes on the property for 60 years. So everyone will be dead and gone by that point. But this property is still not going to have to pay any taxes. They're so sure they're about to grant a 60-year tax abatement to an already existing hotel that's going to be renovated into apartments. Not a full renovation or anything like that. They're so confident that, and I don't even know how old this building is, but it could be already 40 years. So by the time it's 100, they still think it's going to be standing and not paying any taxes. But the Dallas City Hall, which isn't even 50 years old, they claim need to get rid of it. It's past its useful life. And, again, I have no love affair with this building. I'm definitely more endeared to it now than I was at the start. My thinking has evolved on this. But what's really helped the evolution accelerate in my mind is this nonsense $1.4 billion price tag on repairs that just seems ridiculous. And again, Adam Basildua, he's called it out. He said it looks like BS too. And this will be an interesting one. There will be strange bedfellows in this political scenario. And Adam Basildua, he's on the right side of this. Even Paula Blackman, I think, is on the right side of this. Kara Mendelson, Paul Ridley, those four. We'll see about the rest. The way that the vote went a few months ago, even to commission the report, I thought was illustrative of how the ultimate vote is going to go. And I think it went 9 or 10-5, something like that, including the mayor, to explore or to commission this report to determine the price tag. And I thought, basically, if you voted to even commission this report, then, which included alternative options, that was the really key piece. That vote, they could have voted just to get an invoice or an estimate of repairs. They could have just done that, but no, they all voted, or those 9 or 10, to include other options for, instead of staying in City Hall, moving somewhere else. I'm going to go ahead and read to you, actually, Adam Basildua. He released a statement yesterday, a really strong statement that opposes the whole process, whatever it was, of coming up with this over $1 billion figure. So I'll just read to you a little bit of it, and I have retweeted it at RTR_Bronin, RTR_Bronin, if you want to read the whole thing. This report does not read like a neutral assessment. Instead, it reads like a justification memo. The $906 million renovation figure, that was at the low end, is being presented to the public as though it is settled fact. It is not. It is a constructed number built on the roughest class of cost estimating available, with an enormous margin of error, and padded with financing, relocation, and interior upgrade costs that would exist under any scenario. And again, I'm going to just go ahead and skim a little bit here. Where is the independent review from professionals who have no financial stake in whether City Hall stays or goes? The structural report states there is no widespread structural instability. Deficiencies are described as localized. Any asbestos present poses no immediate risk if undisturbed. Those facts matter. They do not automatically justify full evacuation or the sale of a public asset. Absolutely correct. And let's be honest about what this is and what it is not. Selling City Hall will not improve public safety. It will not accelerate street repairs. It will not enhance sanitation services, housing stability, or neighborhood infrastructure. It will not improve response times or deliver better core services. Yeah, and you know what else is, just as I've been thinking about all these repairs, have you ever gotten a home inspection report? You ever purchased a home? And you get a home inspection report, and it's typically a lengthy, if not exhaustive, list of repairs that the home inspector said you should do. You should make these repairs. But usually there's a disclaimer in there. Doesn't mean you need to do them all right now. Doesn't mean you have to do them in the first year. This is just an inventory of what needs to be done. Some are urgent, some are less urgent, and it doesn't get into the pricing, typically, the home inspection, but you don't have to do everything all at once. You don't. That's a fact. And, I was making comments earlier. I was looking at what other cities have done in terms of repairing their own city halls where that's been necessary, including LA, including San Francisco, Cleveland, Philadelphia. And I did tweet this out as well, RTR_Bronin, RTR_Bronin. I found nothing anywhere near $1 billion figure for repairs to any city hall, including roof, including ADA compliance. In California, the LA City Hall and the San Francisco City Hall, they did earthquake mitigation, or they had to shore up the buildings for earthquakes. Now, that was some time ago, so, the inflation, I'm sure. But that was in the $200 million range, $200 to $300 million range for earthquake safety. Everything else is well below $100 million in repairs. Again, for all kinds of things, all the same kinds of things that are proposed on the list of needs for the Dallas City Hall. So this is just insanity. So I kind of think that's where things are at. They're going to get a lot of blowback on this for sure. And, as they should. This is a huge decision. This is an enormous decision. Dallas has a very poor track record of preserving its architecture. And this would really just be the pinnacle of that if they get rid of this building. And I'm feeling less sympathetic about the Mavs too. They'll find a place. They have a place to go. Okay, I don't feel bad for the billionaire Miriam Adelson, whatever her name is. So we'll see what happens on that. Make sure you tune in to the City Hall, the full council briefing that's going to be on Wednesday this week. They are definitely going to be discussing it, I imagine. Or this report, I think, is going to go before one of the committees first. They'll discuss it there as well. And I don't have the dates up in front of me, but all the committees, they'll be meeting this week, many of them. So make sure to check that out. I'll be getting the video. I'll be watching. A lot of people will be watching. And if you haven't had a chance to go out and vote, it's early voting. This is the last week of early voting. Make sure you get out and vote. It looks like turnout has been robust compared to 4 years ago, so that's good. I'll talk about voting. I'll save that for the next episode. I'll talk about my vote. But I have gone and voted. I'll tell you how that went on the next episode. All right, I am Bronin. Thank you for tuning in once again to the Real Texas Radio Podcast. Keep tuning in, keep listening, and I will catch you on the next episode.